Hello, World Wide Web. I'm Dr. Shado, the internet personality who could really use a time machine. They are quite useful, as we see in the 1984 classic, The Terminator. Originally intended to come out in '83, The Terminator was delayed a bit as Arnold Schwarzenegger, who plays the Terminator, needed to finish his work starring in Conan the Destroyer first. Rather than recast the role, the movie was simply pushed back a year as the writer and director, James Cameron, felt that only Arnold could truly embody the role. Which does kind of go against the original intent of the Terminator. He's supposed to be your average, everyday, unremarkable, easily forgettable kind of guy. But then, of course, James Cameron decided that it would probably be pretty fucking awesome to change it up to an Austrian bodybuilder. As such, Arnold Schwarzenegger stars in The Terminator as the Terminator. In The Terminator, the Terminator travels back in time to find his target and Terminator. Of course, that means he's the bad guy and a hero's gotta stop him, but... Who are you really watching this for? The meek little human who stalwardly fights against all odds? Or the boulder bicep behemoth who punches through cars? Let's take a look at the Terminator and find out. The story opens long after the story is already over. At least according to the text, this world has been royally fucked by machines in the far-flung future. However, that might change now in a battle that will take place in our present, in 1984. The big takeaway from this to me, though, is the opening theme. Melodic, electronic, robotic, and exotic. That last one probably due to the 1316 time signature. It's not a very common one to use. Either way, the actual tale begins on an unassuming Los Angeles night, where a sudden electrical event shuts off a running internal combustion engine. But that's not the only thing that's hard to explain.
What the hell?
Evidently, ripples in time work as an excuse to repeat audio clips and not even attempt to try and match the lip sync, and it still kind of works. This surge of sparks results in the mysterious materialization of Arnold Schwarzenegger. Him and only him.
Hey, what's wrong with this picture?
Well, considering Cameron didn't actually get filming permits for a lot of the scenes in this movie, mostly those shot at night, that was some honest-to-God surprise Schwarzenegger schlong on the street. After a little chit-chat, consisting mainly of Arnold repeating what the men say to him, he cuts to the chase and demands they give him their clothes. The punk gang, led by a blue-haired Bill Paxton, doesn't agree with this course of action. So... checking that over frame by frame, good, no Arnold penis. He just rips the motherfucker's heart out. That's advertiser-friendly. The last punk standing, Brian Thompson, quickly agrees to the terms of the exchange. Shortly thereafter, however, another peculiar electrical phenomenon occurs in a lonely alleyway, witnessed by prolific bum actor Stan Yale.
Hey, buddy, did you just see a real bright light?
See that guy? Hold it right there!
Seems the first order of business when traveling back in time is to get in the pants of the first man you meet. Standards need not apply. Indeed, even after being spotted by the officers and chased down over stealing a homeless man's ass-smelling legwear, somehow Kyle Reese, played by Michael Biehn, thinks they're worth fighting over.
What day is it? The date?
12th May, Thursday.
What year?
That part would likely be the easiest to remember. Kyle loves these pants so much, in fact, that even after the chase leads into a clothing store, which he does utilize to steal himself a spiffy trench coat and pair of sneakers, still has no reason to even bother looking in the men's legwear section, just pick up a spare boomstick and then use a phone book to look up Sarah Connor, played by Linda Hamilton, at least this one, going to work at Big Jeff's. This scene establishes her job sucks, and people in general are complete assholes to her for seemingly no reason.
Nice going, kid. How to give you the tip?
Look at it this way, in 100 years, who's gonna care?
Oh my, this specimen has a scoop of ice cream in her pocket. What a bitch. But the Terminator has also been busy heading into a gun shop owned by none other than Dick Miller.
Phased plasma rifle in the 40-watt range.
Hey, just what you see, pal.
The Uzi 9mm.
To live before 1986, where fully automatic weapons could be purchased with far less paperwork. And brand new. And by private citizens. Though, this is California, and their gun laws are all kinds of fuck your freedom. In any case, Arnold isn't interested in waiting periods or background checks. He's just gonna take the guns right now.
You can't do that.
And just like the gun show loophole, if you murder the clerk, there's no background check. And yeah, that is also illegal, but then again, so is the so-called gun show loophole. As is cutting off the stock to give the shotgun an overall length under 26 inches, but Kyle could give a fuck about regulations. He's got a job to do. Later, first we have to watch the Terminator do his job, tracking down Sarah Connor via a listing in the phone book.
Sarah Connor?
Yes?
Fuck it, close enough. Alright boys, it's time to go home and watch Watson kick ass on Jeopardy again. Because plot progression is more important than basic human decency, the police reveal the name of the victim almost immediately, allowing Sarah's coworkers to laugh at her for having the same moniker as a corpse.
You're dead,
In
honey.
other late-breaking news, Teamster representatives have
Honestly, it can be difficult at times to differentiate between service jobs and purgatory. The confusion doesn't end there, though, as we see when Kyle, hiding out in the car for the night, exposes him to excavation machines which remind him of the execution machines from his time. Way in the future, when he says to a fellow soldier, hey, let's go over there and do stuff, and after they do, she blows the fuck up. Oh well, Kyle is player one, so the secondary characters come out of the woodwork to save him, with less than optimal AI programming, leaving him trapped in a burning wreckage. Which was likely a memory-based nightmare and not a memory in and of itself. When the man can travel through time, that doesn't necessarily mean he gets extra lives and checkpoints. This was just a nap, though. The night is still young, as evidenced by Sarah Connor getting ready to go out, while her roommate Ginger, played by Boss Mota, gets ready for her boyfriend to come over. Slight problem with Sarah's naive assumptions on what the future held for her, however.
Hi, Sarah. Dan Morsky. Something's come up and it looks like I won't be able to make it tonight. Just can't get out of it.
Hardly an adequate excuse. At least going by my personal experiences, being feverish and exhausted in the middle of a thunderstorm does not constitute a good enough reason to stay home. No bother, Sarah can have a good time all by herself. This is made slightly more difficult when a news report informs her that yet another Sarah Connor in town has been found brutally murdered. When they mention they were killed in the order that they were listed in the phone book, she checks and realizes that she's next on the list. That, along with the fact that she is very obviously being followed by a man on the street, leads her to duck into the nightclub Technoir and call the police.
You have reached the Los Angeles Police Department emergency number. All our lines are busy. If you need a police car sent out to you, please stay on the line.
That's not how 911 works. You do get an answer very quickly. It just then takes the police 2 to 3 hours to show up, by my experience. Of course, we could all see it wasn't Schwarzenegger who was trailing Sarah, as he's far too busy tracking down Sarah Connor's address from the phone book and murdering the fuck out of everyone inside. Almost seems like a job well done, until he overhears the answering machine.
Ginger, this is Sarah. Pick up if you're there. I'm at this place on Pico Boulevard called Technoir.
That's one way to tell if you're watching a horror movie. How much better off would the characters be if they just didn't do stupid shit? It's not like she's relying on Ginger anyway, having called the LAPD again, and getting through to Lieutenant Ed Traxler, played by Paul Winfield. He and Lance Henriksen, who plays Detective Volkovich, advise her to stay in the club out in the open where her pursuer has no chance to attack. Of course, when you're Arnold Schwarzenegger, being surrounded isn't a risk, it's inconsequential. But Kyle Reese has come to save the day. Of course, there's one thing movies have taught me, it's that words speak louder than action, so he's still gonna have to work pretty hard to convince her that he's actually the good guy.
Come with me if you want to live.
Not making yourself sound any more sane, but at least not immediately dangerous. Which is more than we can say for Arnold, whom despite how much buckshot he takes, keeps rising back up for more. So they must run! Or, fuck it, this is LA, they must drive! This leads to a good old-fashioned car chase, but that's no reason to let the exposition slow down, as Kyle has a fuck ton to explain to Sarah.
How could that man just get up after you did?
Not a man. Machine. Terminator. Cyberdyne Systems Model 101.
Or T-800. Ah, fuck it, it's not like this movie series has anything against retroactive continuity. After a little more fancy driving and actually managing to slip away from the Terminator, he continues.
Underneath, it's a hyperalloy combat chassis. Microprocessor controlled. Fully armored. Very tough.
Well, in that case, he probably would have been better off using the cop's revolver instead of the shotgun. I mean, shotguns are great. I love shotguns. Big punch to them. Against soft targets. But against metal, you're better off with small and fast to punch through it. She points out the crazy shit he's talking about is way too sci-fi, even for the 80s. And he agrees, and sounds way more in line with the 2020s.
Are you saying it's from the future?
One possible future.
The future has endless possibilities. You could be going towards flying cars and colonizing Mars. Or nuclear winter and fidget spinners. Eventually, he does get her to stop trying to flee for her life after explaining that the Terminator is after her specifically, and despite not having great weapons at his disposal, he's the only one who can protect her. Rather important, as they have to sneak around the parking garage, finding a new ride to hide in, and continue expositing about exactly why the Terminator wants Sarah Connor so dead. Seems not too long from now, there's going to be a good old-fashioned nuclear war. Why? Well, they just so happen to put an AI in charge of them.
They say it got smart. A new order of intelligence. Then it saw all people as a threat, not just the ones on the other side. Decided our fate in a microsecond. Extermination.
But who would be so stupid as to put the fate of people's lives in the hands of a fiddly AI and broken algorithms that haven't even been properly tested? The point is, there was one guy who figured out how to avoid the wrath of the Content ID bot and taught more to fight the machines.
His name is Connor. John Connor. Your son, Sarah. Your unborn son.
Okay, few questions. Last name's also Connor. It's not exactly unheard of, but usually kids don't take the mother's last name. Also, how do you break this news and not alter someone's reproductive habits? Can we get a conception date on the kid, or at least the number of condoms used beforehand? Because, if this isn't exactly 100% right, well, fuck your future. Now that he's outlined the plot for her, the Terminator spots them and they must run! Helps that Model 101 here happen to be driving a police cruiser and hears all the chatter regarding the search. Still, he does manage to slip the machine's grasp yet again. But then there's the problem of the LAPD.
No, Reese! No! 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 They'll kill you.
Yeah, but only once. Still one too many, so Kyle surrenders, and Sarah is taken into police custody for two reasons. One, her own protection, and two, to get a profile on Kyle, along with the help of the resident criminal psychologist, Peter Silberman, played by Earl Bowen.
Is Reese crazy?
Well, that's what we're gonna find out.
By assuming that everything he says is fiction outside of I confess to whatever means you have to file the least paperwork. As far as interrogation scenes go, this is quite entertaining, as Kyle doesn't just go over the plot once more, but he has to explain the finer points of the convoluted storyline to a very skeptical audience.
Why this elaborate scheme with the Terminator?
It had no choice. Their defense grid was smashed. We'd won.
Just ignore that point in future movies, though. If there's one thing Hollywood hates, it's closure. He goes on to explain that the time machine was destroyed on top of it, another point that maybe we should ignore from here on out, and what better way to distract us than by watching the Terminator do some maintenance after its very rough encounter with Kyle. It's been so damaged its face actually morphs into an animatronic prop, at least until it dons some shades and transforms back into Schwarzenegger. This just before we finish watching Kyle's recorded interrogation.
Something about the field generated by a living organism. Nothing dead will go. I didn't build the fucking thing!
Okay. If it's metal...
Surrounded by living tissue.
Oh, right.
Well, that still doesn't quite explain why he didn't bring a weapon for the trip. I mean, yeah, it's kind of hard to fit a rifle suppository. However, wouldn't a plasma derringer be able to fit in his lower intestine for the trip? After he breaks down screaming about the Terminator coming for Sarah and there being no way to stop it, only one question remains.
So Reese is crazy?
In technical terminology, he's a loon.
So, he's an avian piscivore? The police come up with their own mundane reasoning behind this so-called Terminator. He can survive buckshot because, look, body armor exists. And that smashy windshield punch was likely because he was on drugs or something. Don't worry about a thing. You're safe here. Surrounded by police officers. It's not like the Terminator's just going to walk through the front door and... Oh, shit.
I'm a friend of Sarah Connor. I was told that she's here. Could I see her, please?
No, can't see her. She's making a statement.
Oh, yeah, no, Mr. Towering Pile of Death. She's talking right now, so you're gonna have to come by later to kill her.
I'll be back.
I wonder why I've never heard anyone argue the Mandela effect for that line. No one out there wants to claim to be from the I'll be back dimension. Of course, by being back, the Terminator means he's going to drive a fucking car through the door, smashing through the flimsy wooden barrier that could never have easily held him back in the first place anyway. This means it's time for an action scene as Schwarzenegger moves through the police station, killing the fuck out of everyone in his path. In case you were wondering why it took me so long to even mention that Paul and Lance were in this movie in the first place, it's not like they're in it for very long anyway. One good thing about the police being fucking eviscerated is now Kyle is free to escape as well, and save Sarah from the Terminator. And I just love the sound of the music as they do so. Allegedly, it was originally written slightly different with a more heroic sound to it, but Cameron wanted them to tone it down just a tad, so they removed one instrument and kept the rest because it was still fucking awesome. This awesome composition gives them the chance to slip away from the Terminator and escape into the night. Thus, they have a chance to slow down and go over more exposition. Sort of. Sarah complains about how her teaching her son to fight makes no sense as she is anything but a warrior, but she also asks about who John's father is, surely before deciding she actually doesn't want to know because that might spoil shit later. Eventually, she settles on having Kyle tell her a bedtime story about the future. The horrible, dark future where humans are relentlessly hunted by machines for extermination. But hey, a story's a story. Besides, this gives us another excuse to teleport into said future and watch Kyle return to his sad, struggling group of survivors. Shortly before a Terminator slips in. This one being played by Franco Columbo, who begins to lay waste to the human filth surrounding him. This looks like it might be the end. Nah, fade out to a happy 1984 morning.
I was dreaming about dogs.
We use them to spot Terminators.
For fuck's sake, Kyle, everything's about the Terminator with you, isn't it? The nightmare isn't over yet, though, as the Terminator might have lost track of Sarah Connor, but he has her personal contacts list and locates the address of Sarah's mother's cabin. Which is hardly anything substantial. I mean, it's not like after Kyle expressly tells Sarah to stay put and not let anyone know where she is, she's gonna call up her mother's cabin first thing and oh, what the fuck?
I love you, Mom.
I love you too, sweetheart.
When you have no good reason to do something like that, and express instructions not to, yet you still somehow manage to pull it off. Only in a horror movie are characters this stupid. Also, surprise, they're making pipe bombs. This is a bit out of left field, but originally the decision wasn't at random. Kyle and Sarah decided not to simply flee the Terminator, but destroy the company responsible for the AI that led to Judgment Day in the first place. This is also sidetracked a bit, though, when Sarah asks why Kyle volunteered to be sent back, at which point he makes no secret of the fact that he had a picture of Sarah for ages and kinda sorta got creepily attached to it.
I came across time for you, Sarah. I love you. I always have.
And violently thrashing you around a car was everything I ever dreamed it could be. Which is a good enough confession of feelings to activate Naked Time. Unfortunately, they fucked for so long, the Terminator has come too. But normally it's the bad guy who has the power of teleportation in horror movies. Oh well. The point is the chase is on. Also, how convenient they made those pipe bombs, even though they skipped over that part about changing the past in favor of the final cut of the film, because they've come in very handy for dealing with the Terminator. Not only on his motorcycle, mind you, but after he steals a truck and attempts to run Sarah Connor down, Kyle slips a bomb in the back. Which, despite how good it looked, was of course a miniature made up to look like a tanker truck, not a full-size actual damn tanker truck. It's a good thing too, because the first shot wasn't any good and they had to retake it. Imagine trying to explain that to city officials. The point is that Terminator is roasty toasty, and Sarah can finally embrace Kyle, knowing well that the terror is finally over. Or rather, that's where the studio wanted it to end, but considering the whole damn movie was based on a guy's fever dream about a skeletal robot rising out of flames, you kinda need that shot for it to be complete. Also, you know, the classic fourth act of horror movies, of course. Thus, the real final battle is underway. Unfortunately, it's probably the least visually impressive segment of the movie. Sarah and Kyle run for cover in a factory while being tormented by the Terminator, played half the time by janky stop motion, and the other half with a life-size metal puppet that looks great, but you can tell the puppeteers are having difficulty with how much the damn thing weighs. Unfortunately, even at this weakened state, the Terminator is still insanely powerful and unrelenting. But, oh yeah, it's a good thing we made those pipe bombs! Now with the Terminator finally destroyed, Sarah can run away with Kyle and... Well, at least we know they're not going to be fighting over the blanket now. Oh, and the Terminator is still alive. Ah, the classic horror movie fifth act? The killing machine is down to its torso, but it's still doing whatever it can to complete its mission and kill Sarah Connor. However, she knows the only way to truly defeat him is to record a Terminator vs. Hydraulic Press video, crushing the artificial life out of it. Therefore, melancholy ending! Sarah's alive, and surprise, surprise, that one-off boning with Kyle left her pregnant. Knowing she's going to raise John Connor, she heads south of the border, where we see she has difficulty with Spanish, but in any case is better than the gas station attendant, who she needs a Spanish-English dictionary to talk with at first, yet soon after, her small child snaps a plot-relevant photograph of her and gets $4 out of it. Suddenly, screw the book, the gas station attendant can translate for the kid.
What did he just say?
He said there's a storm coming in.
I know.
Well, then why did you ask? Anyway, that was The Terminator. And it's a classic for obvious reasons. Lots of things about this movie just work, and it's honestly hard to explain. For instance, the time travel angle, while not fully explained in a manner that would be fitting of science fiction, feels like it helps the story a lot better than might have been intended. Every writer wants the story to feel natural, but the fact that the Terminator is so very 80s somehow makes the time travel seem more believable. Somehow, the Terminator is both a period piece and timeless. When it comes to the acting, it's a little more hit and miss, but a lot more hit. Sure, a few throwaway characters' performances can be questionable, but the main cast works so brilliantly it more than makes up for it. Even at the time, Arnold, who had been seen as a physique for hire in Hollywood rather than a capable, talented actor, brought the Terminator to life convincingly. Ironically, his robotic performance convinced studios he actually was capable of more than robotic performances. Then, of course, there's the pacing, which could have suffered a lot due to the need to explain quite a damn lot to make sense of the plot here. However, a good deal of that exposition takes place during car chases, and the flow of the movie isn't interrupted in the slightest. I personally think the original plan to explain they're making pipe bombs to take down that which will create Terminators in the first place may not have been necessary to cut to keep the pacing going, but I must admit the movie flowed fine without it. Overall, the Terminator is known worldwide, and it's easy to see why. You really don't need a critic to go over this one, considering it's been so successful, it's a highly recognizable part of culture around the world. Nevertheless, despite certain shortcomings, the Terminator more than earns 5 crushed cans of Cyberdyne Pop out of 5. And it's a damn good thing we're bringing up time travel, because I'm pretty sure we're going to have to use it as, no matter what, it is now,
The Summer of Arnold Schwarzenegger!
Let's just hope it's not going to go on through November.